Welcome back to Bedtime Historian 9 p.m., where calm history stories each night help you unwind and drift to sleep. Tonight we drift thousands of meters above sea level, into air so clear it feels like glass, into a place where the heavens never stop talking. The Andes stretch below, long silver ribs under the moon, and you lie on your back in the cold grass while a million stars crowd the night sky like tiny eyes. The Inca farmers once did the same, watching, listening, and trusting that those distant lights carried news of when to plant, when to pray, and when to rest. You probably wouldn't survive this altitude for long. The air up here is thin enough to make your head hum, but the Incas were built for it. They lived between earth and sky, their lungs trained by mountains, their sense of time measured not by clocks but by constellations. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And if you're tuning in right now, drop a comment with your location and your local time. Let's see who else is looking up at the stars tonight. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You're lying beneath an Andean night so sharp it cuts thought itself. The stars here don't twinkle, they burn. The Milky Way stretches across the sky like spilled milk, except it isn't white. It's streaked with gold, with tiny dust-dark veins the Incas called Mayu, the heavenly river. The same way your breath fogs in the cold, the cosmos seems to breathe above you. Feels alive. For the Inca farmer, this wasn't poetry. This was survival. The sky was a field too, one that had to be tended and read. Every glimmer up there had its place in a cycle. Birth, rain, harvest, rest. To miss a sign meant famine. The stars weren't decorations, they were instructions. In the highlands, the thin air made the stars unnaturally visible. Even faint constellations showed their shapes clearly. If you lived here, you would have noticed patterns of brightness and shadow others might never see. The Inca saw not only bright constellations like we do, but dark ones too, forms traced by the black clouds of the Milky Way. You might recognize them if you stare long enough. A llama's neck, a fox's tail, a toad leaping through cosmic mud. Below, the earth answered back. Villages built terraces like steps leading toward the heavens. Stone walls curved gently as if the mountains themselves were bowing to the sky. When dawn approached, farmers would wake before the first light, scanning for specific stars that told them whether the rainy season was near. You can almost hear it, the slow, rhythmic hush of the wind through maize leaves, the quiet murmur of families stirring, the crackle of kindling lit to greet the sun. The stars above fade one by one, like candles blown out by invisible breath. But the knowledge they offered remains, recorded not in books but in memory, habit, and ritual. It's strange to think that a civilization could read the night the way you scroll through a weather app. But their accuracy was uncanny. They knew which star clusters disappeared when frost came early. They could tell from the Milky Way's tilt when water would run stronger through the irrigation channels. Some modern scientists still can't fully explain how precise their readings were, whether through observation alone or something more spiritual, something between devotion and data. And maybe that's what makes the Inca sky so hypnotic. It blurs the line between science and story. When you gaze at the stars, you might see distant suns, cold and mathematical. They saw ancestors, animals, teachers. And somehow both are true. The night deepens. The chill seeps through your blanket. Somewhere far off, a dog barks, echoing against the mountains. You tilt your head and see the Southern Cross, brilliant and steady, like a compass frozen in eternity. That same constellation guided Inca priests, travelers, and farmers alike. It pointed toward the river below, mirroring the one above. In their language, Hanan Pasha meant the upper world, a place of light and ancestors. The Inca didn't separate heaven from earth. They were two halves of the same breathing cosmos. Each star corresponded to something tangible, a mountain, a lake, a crop, a person. When you looked up, you were also looking inward through time. Tomorrow they'd plant potatoes on terraces that glistened like scales in the sun. But tonight, the farmers lay still, eyes half closed, their thoughts drifting with the constellations. You sense it too, the weight of centuries pressing gently like a hand on your shoulder. Here, under this ancient sky, the story begins. The city sleeps beneath the heavens, but its very bones remember the stars. You step softly through the cobbled streets of Cusco, capital of the Inca world, and even in darkness the layout feels deliberate. Each alley, each temple, each plaza aligned to something more than geography. It's as if the city itself is a constellation that fell to earth. The Inca called Cusco the navel of the world, Cusco. Not a metaphor, but a literal center point connecting realms, sky, mountain, and underworld. To them, the city wasn't built under the stars, it was built with them. The pattern of its streets mirrored the sacred animal of their empire, the puma. From above, Cusco's temples formed its head, the main square its heart, and the river its spine. This wasn't coincidence. This was architecture as cosmology, a living compass carved into stone. Imagine walking through that city at night. Above you, the Southern Cross tilts like a celestial sundial. Below, walls of perfect stone blocks fit together so precisely you couldn't slide a leaf between them. These weren't just walls, they were mirrors of the constellations that govern planting and ceremony. Somewhere, a priest lights a torch, its flame reflecting off polished gold in a temple window that faces east, waiting for the first light of solstice dawn. If you stand in that same spot today, you'll see the same alignment. Archaeologists have mapped it. The Temple of the Sun, Coricancha, precisely oriented to the June solstice sunrise. On that day, light streams through a small opening and touches a golden altar for a few minutes before disappearing. The farmers waiting outside know what it means: time to prepare the soil to wake the sleeping seeds. The Inca didn't separate city planning from astronomy. To them, every structure participated in the cosmic rhythm. The Sikh lines, 41 invisible rays radiating from Cusco, connected more than 300 sacred sites or huacas. Each line marked time, ritual, and geography all at once. Walk along one and you'd move through both space and calendar, through both mountain and myth. It's like if your neighborhood streets also doubled as pages in a living calendar app. You might smile at the precision. The Spanish chroniclers who arrived in the 1500s certainly did not. They described Cusco's geometry with both awe and confusion, calling it mathematics of the devil. One priest wrote that even the shadows obeyed their numbers. He wasn't entirely wrong. Inca builders tracked the sun's movement so carefully that whole temples functioned as observatories. But beneath the mathematics lay something gentler: reverence. To the Inca, geometry was prayer, stone was conversation. Aligning a wall to a star wasn't superstition, it was respect. Each dawn and dusk became part of an unbroken dialogue between the people and the heavens. You pass through a narrow alley where water still runs down the same carved channels that once cooled the royal gardens. The air smells faintly metallic, and in the silence you notice the hum of insects, the faraway crack of a llama bell. The city feels alive, pulsing with its own slow heartbeat. Somewhere a woman hums a Quechua lullaby, the same melody sung centuries ago to calm children under the same constellations. Above, the Milky Way arches like a river. To the Inca it was a river, Mayu, reflecting the Vilcanota River that winds through the valley below. The heavens and the earth were twins. What one did, the other followed. When the Milky Way tilted in the sky, it was said the river below tilted too, altering the rains, shifting fertility from one region to another. The city's waterworks and celestial maps weren't separate systems. They were synchronized mechanisms of survival. That interdependence meant the people never stopped watching. Priests climbed towers at night to measure the angles between stars, using sighting stones like cosmic protractors. Farmers too watched, not for philosophy but for food. They'd look for the faint glimmer of the Pleiades, for the rise of certain dark constellations, omens woven into daily chores. Modern scholars debate whether the Inca possessed formal astronomical instruments or relied purely on observation. Some evidence points to stone pillars arranged as gnomons, others to temple corridors acting as optical tunnels. But perhaps the debate misses the point. For the Inca, the tool was the mountain itself, the sky itself, the living landscape of their devotion. You pause at the edge of the city. The wind rises, crisp and clean, carrying the scent of damp stone. In the far distance, lightning flickers beyond the peaks, silent and soft. For a moment, Cusco feels suspended, half dream, half design, its lines stretching outward like the ribs of a cosmic creature. Down in the valley, farmers sleep beneath roofs of woven ichu grass, unaware that from the stars above, their fields glow in miniature, echoing the same constellations mapped across their capital. Above and below, heaven and earth whisper the same geometry. You can almost hear them breathe in rhythm. And as you settle into that steady pulse, the rhythm of stone, of star, of night, you understand, this was not a city built to conquer but to remember. You wake before the first hint of dawn. The mountain air is sharp, each breath a cold reminder that you are small compared to the Andes looming above. The world around you still sleeps. The llamas are huddled, the maize fields dark and waiting, but the sky, that ancient storyteller, is already stirring. The stars haven't faded yet. They hang heavy and deliberate as if reluctant to leave. You pull your woven blanket tighter around your shoulders. Beneath it, your heart beats in quiet rhythm with the land. The ground feels alive, full of breath. Somewhere nearby, water trickles through a narrow canal carved by ancestors whose names are now dust. The faint gurgle sounds almost like speech, a language you don't yet know but somehow recognize. To be an Inca farmer was to live by that language. You'd never call yourself an astronomer, but your entire life depended on the sky's moods. You'd learned which stars whispered rain, which ones promised frost, which ones warned of silence. There was no book, no instrument, just patience, memory, and faith. Every night you read the heavens like a familiar face, one that sometimes smiled, sometimes frowned. As you lie on your back, you see it, the great river of light, Mayu, the Milky Way, cutting across the heavens like molten silver. To modern eyes, it's a galaxy. To you, it's the pulse of creation. Every drop of water, every kernel of maize, every human breath is said to flow from it. The Inca believed that the Milky Way mirrored the rivers on Earth. When it turned or tilted, rainfall followed. When it dimmed, the dry season deepened. You glance toward the east. There, near the horizon, faint points begin to shimmer, the Pleiades, the Seven Sisters. You know their return means the planting season approaches. But not all appearances are the same. Some years they glow bright and sharp, meaning generous rain. Other years they appear faint or scattered, warning that the gods will hold back their water. The difference seems subtle, yet your ancestors swore by it and recent scientists, centuries later, found they were right. A dim Pleiades often correlates with El Niño events, when the air grows too warm for the rains to come on time. You can't know that kind of data, of course, you just know your grandmother's warning, when the sisters hide their faces, plant late. You remember her voice now, raspy like dry corn husks, whispering under the starlight as if the stars could hear her too. You rise slowly, shaking dew from your blanket, and face the mountains. Their silhouettes are enormous, but in the pre-dawn they look almost gentle. Somewhere beyond those peaks are other farmers, lying just like you, reading the same stars. Together, though you'll never meet, you form a single community, an empire connected not by roads but by constellations. Your village sits high, above 10,000 feet, on terraces that cling to the slopes like stairways built for giants. Each stone wall keeps the soil from slipping, each furrow carved with mathematical care. You've inherited this precision, not from schooling but from imitation. You watched your elders kneel to the ground, touch the dirt, and look up. Always both, earth and sky, hand and star. A soft wind rolls down the slope. It carries the scent of smoke from a distant hearth. Soon the women will wake and grind maize, the men will gather tools of stone and bronze. But for now you have this quiet moment. You think of the Pacos, the ritual specialists who sometimes visit the village. They speak of Hanan Pasha, the upper world, K Pasha, the living world, and Uku Pasha, the inner world. 3 realms, yet one existence, like the 3 cords of a woven sling. Your task as a farmer is to keep those cords balanced. The stars, they say, are messages from Hanan Pasha. When you honor them, K Pasha thrives. Ignore them and even the soil grows stubborn. Tonight's sky feels kind. You see the outline of the Llama in the Milky Way, a dark constellation formed by the shadows between stars rather than the stars themselves. Her head dips toward the river's curve as if drinking. The elders will say this means the llamas below will bear healthy young this year. Somewhere in the distance, one bleats as if in agreement. You smile. For all the grandeur of the empire, for all its stone cities and gold temples, the real Inca miracle is this quiet exchange between people and cosmos. You plant not by command but by pattern. The emperor may rule from Cusco, but the stars rule him too. Scholars today still debate how much of Inca astronomy was empirical and how much symbolic. Some argue that their observations were a blend of meteorology and myth, half science, half ceremony. But to the farmer under this sky, the difference doesn't matter. The results do. You've seen what happens when people plant against the signs. The rain forgets them. The frost remembers. Now the stars begin to fade. The first streak of pink touches the eastern peaks, and the frost glows faintly on your field like powdered silver. The night has spoken, the day will act. You rise, stretch, and feel the cold bite your fingertips. Another day begins, perfectly timed by the same stars that have always watched. And as you walk toward the terraces, your shadow still long and blue in the half-light, you think, not for the first time, that maybe the heavens read you too. The stars fade, but their message lingers. The river below catches the first light, trembling like a liquid mirror, and you remember what the elders always say, as above, so below. In the Andes, that wasn't a poetic phrase, it was the foundation of existence. The heavens and the earth were reflections of each other, and in between stood you, the farmer, the bridge. As the sun's rim peaks over the mountains, the Milky Way slowly disappears. Yet in your mind, you can still trace it, a silvery path flowing from one horizon to the other. The Inca called it Mayu, the celestial river. It wasn't made of stars, not really, but of the same sacred water that flowed through every canal and mountain stream. The Milky Way was the mother of rivers, the cosmic artery connecting all life. To you, Mayu isn't distant. It's a partner. When it arches high above, you know the real rivers below swell with meltwater. When it tilts or fades, drought might follow. The sky is your weather report, your irrigation chart, your calendar of faith. You kneel beside a channel that runs through your field. It's clear and cold, fed by glacial springs higher up. When you cup the water in your hands, you're holding a fragment of Mayu. The Inca believed that the same current flowed through the heavens and the earth, and through their own bodies. Every pulse in your wrist echoes the rhythm of that river. You're water walking. The priests in Cusco once said that Mayu was guarded by celestial animals. A serpent that slithered through the stars, a toad that croaked thunder, and a pair of llamas that drank from its shining bends. They weren't metaphorical. If you look carefully, really look, you can see their shapes in the dark gaps of the Milky Way. Those were the Inca constellations, not formed by connecting bright stars like our modern maps, but by tracing the shadows within them. It's a beautiful reversal. They didn't seek light in the sky, they sought meaning in the darkness. You picture the celestial llama Yacana. Her head is formed by the Southern Cross, her body by a smoky stretch of dust above Scorpio. Beneath her, a smaller black shape, her baby, follows close, drinking from the same cosmic river. The people believe that when those llamas appear high in the sky at night, real llamas on Earth grow fat and strong. When the shapes fade, it's time to shear or trade them. Even the animal's fertility follows the stars. And not just animals. When Mayu bends steeply in the southern sky, the water in your irrigation canals tends to run lower. When it arches high, the flow increases. Coincidence? Or did centuries of careful watching uncover a real, if mysterious, link between sky and season? Modern scientists still debate it, shrugging at how these highland farmers predicted rainfall so well with no instruments but eyes and patience. Maybe the secret wasn't instruments at all. Maybe it was relationship. The Inca didn't study the stars from a distance. They lived with them. Every ritual, every harvest, every birth aligned with celestial rhythm. You remember the Inti Raymi, the sun festival. The priests would watch the Milky Way's reflection in a bowl of water. When the river of stars touched the edge of its mirror image, they'd declare the solstice. No clock, no compass, just a conversation between sky and surface. You dip your hand again into the channel. The water has a sound, soft, persistent, persuasive. It hums against the stones, and in that hum you hear the same low note that thrums through everything: stars, crops, heartbeat. You've always thought the Inca gods weren't above the clouds but inside things, in the soil, in the corn, in you. Mayu proves it. At night, when the Milky Way stretches directly overhead, the old men gather by the fire and tell the story of how the celestial river once flowed freely to earth. People bathed in starlight and crops grew faster than words. But humans became greedy, hoarding light, so the gods withdrew the river to the heavens, leaving only reflections for those who still listened. When we forget to look up, one says, the water will dry up below. You laugh softly at that memory, but it isn't really funny. The rivers here have been thin lately. Maybe the gods are thirsty for attention again. A quipu, the knotted cords used for Inca record keeping, hangs by the doorway of your hut. Its strings sway gently in the morning breeze, beads of dew glistening like tiny stars. Some say the quipu recorded not just numbers but celestial events. Perhaps each knot, each twist, was a miniature constellation, a woven echo of the sky's order. You stand, brush dust from your hands, and look up one more time. The stars are gone now, hidden by daylight, but you can still feel them watching. The Milky Way, invisible but present, runs directly above you, a river you can't see but still trust. And in that trust lies the heart of your world. The sky doesn't just light your nights, it waters your fields, guides your rituals, and hums quietly in your veins. Down in the valley, the river begins to glitter under full sun. It's Mayu's reflection, calm, endless, patient. You watch it bend, the same curve the stars will take tonight. Everything repeats perfectly. Everything flows, even the heavens. Night returns like a slow tide, washing over the mountains, and once again the sky reveals its secret shapes. If you look closely, really let your eyes soften, you start to see movement where others might see emptiness. The Incas didn't outline constellations by connecting the bright points of light, like modern astronomers. Instead, they looked into the dark spaces of the Milky Way itself, reading the shadows between the stars. They saw life hiding inside the void. You lie back on a woven mat, the air cool and steady, and tilt your head to follow those living silhouettes. There, the great Yacana, the celestial llama, stretches her long neck across the Milky Way, sipping from the cosmic river. Beneath her follows a smaller shadow, the baby llama, never far behind. Their bodies aren't made of stars at all, but of the darkness between them, a negative image as if the universe itself were a woven cloth turned inside out. Farmers like you know her well. When Yacana rises in the sky before dawn, it's time to watch the herds closely. The llamas in your corrals grow restless under that constellation. Their birthing season begins when the mother in the sky stands upright. The stars above are mothers too, nursing their reflection below. It's a relationship so old and intimate that even your herding songs echo it. You hum one now, low and simple, the melody following the rhythm of hooves on rocky paths. To your right, another dark patch thickens near the tail of Scorpio. That's Attic, the fox, crouching as if waiting to pounce. He's a trickster spirit, the villagers say, who loves to steal eggs and scare young llamas. When Attic appears sharply defined, foxes on earth grow bold. Farmers tell their children to guard the pens better, and the elders sprinkle coca leaves in the fire to keep him distracted. You smile remembering that science wrapped in superstition or superstition wrapping science. In these mountains it's impossible to tell which came first. And near the zenith, the Milky Way slithers through the Milky Way, the celestial snake. When it wriggles highest, rains soon follow. It's both omen and blessing. You remember last year when the snake seemed faint, its outline broken by thin clouds. That season brought drought. Some laughed it off but not you. The stars never lie, it's people who stop listening. The Inca cosmology was alive with creatures, dark constellations that mirrored the daily rhythm of their world. There was the toad, symbol of fertility, hiding near the southern bend of the River of Stars, the partridge fluttering in the dust lanes of Sagittarius, even a shepherd who watched over them all. These weren't idle imaginations. They were tools, mnemonic maps that told farmers when to plant, when to harvest, when to let the land rest. To you it's almost musical. Each constellation enters and exits like instruments in a song. First comes the llama, then the fox, then the serpent, each carrying its verse in the cycle of survival. You might say they were the original agricultural calendar, one you didn't hang on a wall but lived beneath every night. The priest who visits once a month says the dark constellations are spirits, their bodies made of the same divine matter as the stars themselves. He warns that when they disappear entirely, swallowed by cloud or smoke, the balance of the world trembles. The Inca believed that once, long ago, the celestial llama stopped drinking from Mayu, and the rivers on earth began to dry. Only after rituals, offerings, and the singing of sacred hymns did she return to her cosmic duty. You wonder if that's true or if it's simply a lesson disguised as myth. Keep the balance or thirst follows. Archaeologists centuries later would marvel at this system. They'd call it dark cloud astronomy, a method almost unique to the Andes. To them it's a quirk of perception, a cultural curiosity. To you, it's the most natural thing in the world. Of course you see shapes in the sky, of course they speak. Every child here can point to the llama or the fox faster than naming a letter. These constellations aren't decorations, they're relatives. You roll to your side and watch a faint line of light ripple through the Milky Way. It's not a star at all, just a glimmer of thin mist. The wind picks up, rustling the itchy grass. You think of how your ancestors must have felt when they first gave names to these shapes, not out of whim but out of wonder. Naming them was a way of belonging, of turning vastness into family. When you herd llamas tomorrow at sunrise, you'll remember this sky. You'll glance up, find Yacana, and feel reassured. She's still there, still drinking from the river that feeds both heavens and hillsides. And in her quiet silhouette lies a message older than any empire, that darkness itself can be full of meaning, and emptiness can teach you when to act. The stars shift slowly. The fox crouches lower, the snake slides toward the horizon. You close your eyes and the world turns upside down, earth above, sky below, until you can no longer tell which is which. For the Inca that was never confusion. It was connection. The nights turn colder now. Each breath leaves a pale ghost in the air, drifting upward toward the same sky that governs your fields. You tighten your woven poncho and look west, where the last trace of sunlight fades into cobalt. Above, the first stars prick through, steady and familiar. You don't count them, you feel them, markers of time, teachers of rhythm. For all its beauty, this sky is also a clock. Not a ticking metallic clock like in distant future lands, but a living one, breathing, seasonal, precise. You don't wear time on your wrist, You walk through it, plant it, harvest it. The stars turn with the earth, and their rotation tells you when to move, when to rest. The Inca had no written calendar in the way empires elsewhere did, yet their sense of time was more intricate than any paper scroll. Their year was a tapestry woven from light and shadow, from the arrival of certain constellations and the behavior of the sun. The heavens told you everything you needed to know if only you watched long enough. You sit on a stone terrace, overlooking the valley where the Vilcanota River glints faintly in the moonlight. The fields below lie still, patches of maize, quinoa, and potatoes sleeping under frost. You remember what your father used to say, "A farmer who doesn't know the stars will lose his harvest to time." You didn't understand it then. You do now. Each month, the stars shift slightly across the horizon, a silent parade marking the calendar's invisible gears. The appearance of Calca, the star house of abundance, told the Inca it was time to prepare storage pits for grain. The return of the Pleiades, the seven sisters, heralded the coming of rains. And when the Southern Cross stood upright at dawn, it signaled the start of the new planting season. No clocks. No paper. Just the patient eyes of a civilization that lived face to face with the sky. In Cusco, high priests kept formal watch. They stood atop towers, tracking solstice and equinox, measuring shadows that slid across temple floors. But here in the countryside you relied on your own horizon. That mountain peak to the east, Apu Sakante, was your calendar's spine. When the sun rose behind it, you knew the dry season was ending. When it rose between the twin peaks of Ozangate, the wet season began. Each year the cycle repeated without fail, as reliable as your own heartbeat. And it wasn't just about seasons, it was about ceremony. Time in the Inca world wasn't an endless line but a loop. Every cycle was sacred repetition. When you planted, you reenacted the first planting. When you harvested, you replayed the first harvest. The stars above were not reminders of the past, they were the past relived nightly. You run your hand along the stone beside you. It's cold, smoothed by centuries of other hands. These terraces aren't mere agriculture. They're instruments, calibrated to catch sunlight in certain angles. On the solstice, you've seen how the shadow of the upper wall disappears for a few seconds, swallowed by the golden beam. The elders laugh softly when it happens, murmuring prayers of thanks. The sky's precision still humbles them. And yet, even with all this cosmic order, there's mystery. Some years the stars betray you. You remember a season when everything looked right, the Pleiades bright, the Milky Way high, but the rains never came. The maize wilted. People whispered that perhaps the gods had shifted the calendar, or that someone somewhere broke the harmony. You offered coca leaves at the spring, buried llama fat beneath the soil, anything to restore the rhythm. The scholars of the future might call that superstition. But to you it was maintenance, keeping the machine of existence well-oiled. Without it, the machine falters. You think about how strange it must seem to outsiders, to measure time not by gears or ink but by light and darkness. Yet isn't that how all time truly passes? Even those future people, staring at glowing screens, still live by sunrise and sunset, by winter and thaw. The Inca just knew how to see it. Your grandmother once said that the stars were seeds of time. Each night they sprouted in different places, growing across the sky until harvested by the dawn. You like that thought? You imagine plucking stars like corn, husking them gently, saving their light for the long dry months. You glance up again. The Southern Cross gleams like a silver compass, tilted slightly now, its lower star touching the horizon. You trace its angle and whisper, almost unconsciously, time to prepare the ground. The season turns not by decree but by inclination. Some scholars today still debate whether the Inca calendar had 12 months or 13. They argue about the number of rituals, about leap years, about the exact alignments of certain temples. They publish papers and build computer models to reconstruct what your ancestors already knew by heart. That time is not arithmetic, it's breathing. It expands and contracts, guided by the pulse of the sun, the orbit of the moon, the tilt of the Milky Way. You lie back, closing your eyes. The chill air nips at your cheeks, but the stones beneath you radiate the day's stored warmth. For a moment, you can feel the slow spin of the earth, turning you ever so slightly under that patient sky. You're both participant and observer in the universe's longest dance. And just as the first frost sparkles in the moonlight, you understand the truth every Inca farmer carried. That to keep time you don't watch the clock, you listen to the stars. You wake before dawn again, before even the roosters dare to test the cold, and look east. The horizon still sleeps, gray and soft. Your eyes sting from the chill but you keep them open. Somewhere out there, past the thin clouds, the Calca Coiler, the Pleiades, are returning. You've been waiting for them. Everyone has. To outsiders, they're just a tight little knot of faint stars, pretty but unremarkable. To you, they're the most important signal of the year. The seven sisters, as people far away might call them, are not just celestial ornaments. They are weather prophets, crop forecasters, whispers of what the next season will bring. You breathe out, watch your breath vanish, and wait for the first glimmer. It's June, the turning of the year in the Andes. The sun's path has slid to its farthest north. The days are shortest now, the nights long and patient. This is when the Inca calendar folds over, the point between harvest and planting. For farmers, it's both an ending and a question mark. The return of the Pleiades is the answer. And there they are. Low above the mountains, like a handful of salt scattered over dark velvet, the little cluster appears. You squint, searching for clarity. Are they bright? Are they sharp? That's the test. When the stars shine crisp and clear, the coming year will be good. Steady rain, healthy crops, full granaries. But when they look hazy or weak, it means trouble. The gods are sending thin water. This morning they seem faint, almost shy. You feel a tightening in your chest. Around you, other villagers emerge from their homes, wrapped in thick cloaks, all staring in the same direction. Silence stretches. No one says it yet, but everyone sees it. The Pleiades are dim this year. Later you'll hear the priests confirm it. Plant late, they'll say. The heavens are tired. And you will. You always listen. The old ways are not to be tested. Centuries later, scientists will puzzle over this strange accuracy. They'll compare climate records, satellite data, El Niño patterns, and realize something astonishing. The Inca were right. During El Niño years, when high-altitude clouds form thin, invisible veils of ice, the Pleiades appear dimmer to the naked eye, and those same years bring drought to the Andes. It's meteorology wrapped in mythology, proven by starlight. You smile at that, though you'll never call it science. To you, it's just knowing how to listen. Back then, when the priests of Cusco saw faint stars, they didn't panic. They adjusted. The empire was built on harmony, not defiance. Farmers delayed their planting. Families stretched their stores of dried potatoes, chuno, and maize beer, chicha. Rituals multiplied, offerings of cornmeal to the springs, music to wake the mountains, incense to please the sky. Some villagers believe that when the Pleiades dim, it's because the spirits are mourning, perhaps for the sun's retreat, or for the greed of people who forget gratitude. Others whisper that the stars are washing themselves in the Milky Way's waters, preparing to shine again. Either way, you give them time. The stars, like crops, need patience. You lie back in the frost-silvered grass and trace the faint glow with your finger. It's funny how tiny they look, and yet they decide everything. Whether your field thrives, whether your children eat well next year, whether your empire's granaries fill. Power doesn't always roar. Sometimes it flickers gently above your head at 4 in the morning. There's a saying among the elders, when the sisters hide their faces, do not wake the earth too soon. You've repeated it since childhood, never really questioning it. The ground must rest. So you wait. And while you wait, you prepare. You mend tools, patch walls, share food, tell stories. The waiting season isn't idle, it's reflective. You notice how time itself breathes differently when the Pleiades vanish for a few weeks each year. The sky feels emptier. You catch yourself glancing upward at night, missing them like old friends. In the great cities, the emperor's astronomers record the Pleiades' every movement. They keep vigil from towers of polished stone, waiting for that delicate sparkle to return. When it finally does, brighter, steadier, they proclaim it across the empire. Messengers run down the valleys carrying the news, plant now. The heavens smile again. In your village there will be a feast. Not a grand one, but enough. Music, laughter, the smell of roasted maize, the clatter of wooden flutes. The people will raise cups of chicha and toast the sky, thanking the sisters for their counsel. But tonight, as you stare upward and see their faint glow blur behind the thin veil of mist, you feel the small ache of uncertainty. What if the rains truly fail this year? What if the mountains stay silent? You roll onto your side, watch the horizon brighten with the slow blush of dawn. The stars fade again, melting back into the invisible. The earth exhales. Somewhere behind you, a llama snorts softly, shaking off frost. Maybe the gods will change their minds. Maybe not. You've learned to live with that mystery, the way the heavens always whisper truth but never quite in full sentences. For now you'll wait. The fields will wait. The sky will decide. And as sunlight spills down the slopes, golden and thin, you murmur the words you learned as a child. Thank you, sisters. May your light find its way home. The world doesn't wake all at once in the Andes. It exhales slowly, mist rising from the terraces, llamas stretching against the first bite of sun, roosters crowing from far-off slopes. You're already up, watching the city of Cusco stir below. Its rooftops gleam with dew, and at its heart, the golden walls of the Coricancha temple catch the dawn like a mirror. That temple, the enclosure of gold, is more than a building. It is the empire's heartbeat. Every farmer, priest, and noble knows that the sun himself rises through it. If the farmers are the hands of the Inca world, the astronomers of Coricancha are its eyes. From where you stand, you can see them, tiny silhouettes moving along the temple's upper terraces, robes rustling in the wind. They are the Amautas, the keepers of knowledge, priests trained to read the heavens like scripture. Their instruments aren't telescopes or compasses but carved stones, sighting tubes, and memory. One of them raises a hand to measure the light's angle. Another kneels, tracing a line in sand. The sun is climbing, and with it, the rhythm of the empire. You hear the temple's bronze gong ring, a low, resonant sound that seems to vibrate in your ribs. It marks the moment the first shaft of sunlight pierces the temple's narrow eastern window. The beam slides perfectly across the golden walls, illuminating the great disk of the sun god, Inti. Every June this happens without fail, without error. The beam strikes the same point for the same few minutes before the earth turns and it fades again. You've seen it since childhood, and yet it still feels like a miracle. How could stone, shadow, and light conspire so precisely? The priests say the temple itself is alive. Built by the legendary ruler Pachacuti, Coricancha was aligned to the heavens with mathematical precision. Its walls, made of andesite stone so finely fitted that no mortar was needed, angle toward key points of the solstice, sunrise, and sunset. To stand here is to stand inside a celestial instrument. When the beam hits Inti's golden disk, a murmur ripples through the city. Farmers kneel. Children press their palms together. The emperor himself, Sapa Inca, stands motionless, his robes heavy with sunlight. For that brief moment, he is more than a man. He is the son of the sun, his divine legitimacy renewed by light. You watch from afar, feeling both reverence and amusement. Somewhere in you, a small, sleepy thought says, imagine being your boss's biological excuse for daylight. But then the moment sweeps you up. The light moves. Drums begin. You can almost hear them, the deep Huancara drums, the soft panpipes answering from the terraces. It's the festival of Inti Raymi, the grandest celebration of the year. Priests scatter flower petals across the plaza. Golden corn beer flows. And as the city dances, astronomers climb higher to record the sun's position in stone and memory. To them, this isn't just devotion, it's data. The solstice marks the boundary between the old year and the new, between the last harvest and the next sowing. 4 weeks before and after, the priests observe the rising and setting points of the sun, marking its path with tall stone pillars called sukankas. When the sun rises directly between them, the new agricultural cycle begins. In a way, Coricancha is both a temple and a calendar, both church and observatory. The Inca didn't separate science from spirit because to them they were one and the same. You can't measure the heavens without honoring them. You can't plant maize without thanking the gods who lent you the rain. The Amautas record what they see. They use no parchment, no ink, only chords. Each knot in a quipu carries meaning. Dates, offerings, celestial alignments, solar positions. You've held one once, soft alpaca thread, dyed bright with cochineal and indigo, smelling faintly of smoke. In your hands, it felt like holding a timeline woven from breath and fiber. The priests say a skilled reader can see the seasons in its knots. You wonder if the stars themselves read it too. Even among the empire's rulers, the star readers are treated with awe. The emperor listens to them before launching wars or announcing taxes. After all, if the sky warns of drought or eclipse, not even armies can change its decree. There's a legend whispered around fires. That one year, an Inca emperor defied the priest's warning and planted early despite dim stars. His fields flooded and he lost half the kingdom's maize. Whether true or not, every child knows the moral. Ignore the heavens and the earth will laugh at you. You smile at that thought. The astronomers on the temple roof have finished their measurements. The sun has fully risen now, flooding the city with light so fierce it turns the walls almost white. The priests kneel, their shadows long and still. From your vantage point, you can see the Sikh lines, those sacred paths that radiate outward from Coricancha like the spokes of a sunwheel. Each line leads to a waka, a shrine or sacred spring, mapping both geography and ritual time. It strikes you then that the Inca didn't just build temples, they built order. An order that extended from sky to soil, from emperor to farmer, from light to harvest. And somehow, in this balance between precision and devotion, they found peace. You breathe in the mountain air, now warm with sunlight, and whisper a silent thanks, to Inti, to the Amautas, to the patient stars still lingering pale in daylight. Even after the festivals end, their rhythm continues. The sun will rise tomorrow through another slit of gold, another priest will measure, another farmer will kneel. Time for the Inca is never lost, it just returns. By late afternoon, the sunlight turns honey-colored, flowing down the valley walls as if poured from a tilted bowl. You climb toward the ridge above the temple, to a smaller stone structure whose doorway faces east. It looks simple, 2 pillars framing a narrow slit. But when you stand in that doorway, the world rearranges itself. This is Inti Wat Ana, the Temple of the Sun's Breath. The priests call it that because the sun itself seems to exhale through it. During the solstice, when dawn edges over the peaks, the first light enters this stone corridor and travels down its length, striking a carved altar with the precision of a heartbeat. It lasts less than a minute, but in that moment you can feel the world align. The Inca believed the gods left instructions in the geometry of light. The stone wasn't built to impress, but to measure. When the beam reached the altar, it told the empire, now is the time to sow. You step inside, brush your hand against the cool wall. The interior smells faintly of earth and ash. Outside, the wind howls through the valley, but here it's silent, as if the stone itself is holding its breath. You notice tiny carvings, lines and notches that trace the horizon's contour. They mark the sun's journey through the year. Priests once placed polished mirrors on those spots, catching sunlight and reflecting it toward golden bowls of maize beer offered to Inti. When the light appeared, they'd whisper, "The sun has spoken." Imagine being one of those priests climbing here before dawn, wrapped in a robe that shimmered with tiny bronze discs, waiting for the world's most delicate clock to strike. No gears, no ticking hands, only the certainty that when the earth tilts just so, the first breath of sunlight will pass through the slit, warming the stone that waits for it. And if the beam missed? If clouds lingered or the light shifted wrong? Panic. It meant the heavens were displeased. The empire's rhythm was broken. The farmers below would hesitate to plant. The priests would stay awake all night, burning incense, begging for clarity. You've heard old stories of one year when that happened. The sun refused to breathe. Dawn came, but the light fell short of the altar. The priest said Inti had turned his face away. Days later, a frost hit early and killed the young maize shoots. Whether coincidence or cosmic punishment, no one dared to question. Since then, the ceremony has been performed with such care that even the angle of a single shadow feels sacred. You stand at the threshold now, feeling that same anticipation. The sun hangs low, nearing the mountains. Slowly, its last rays stretch, and for a brief instant, a sliver of light slices through the slit, touching the back wall. You can almost hear it, like the sigh of something ancient and vast. The wind outside shifts. A flock of birds scatters from a nearby cliff. Everything seems to pause. You understand in your bones why they called this place a breath. It's not the sun's breath alone. It's the earth's too, exhaling warmth after a cold night, inhaling promise before the long growing season. For the Inca, this wasn't astronomy as we think of it, it was choreography. Every temple, every mountain, every terrace was part of a cosmic dance, each step timed to the turning of the heavens. When Inti Wat Ana spoke, the empire moved. Farmers sharpened their tools, women prepared seeds blessed by priests, and the emperor announced that the gods had renewed their contract with humankind. You picture that moment, tens of thousands of farmers kneeling in the fields, holding maize kernels in open palms, waiting for the first call from the city. When the runners came, breathless, dust-covered, shouting, "Sow! Sow now!" the valleys would erupt into motion. Across hundreds of miles, hands plunged into soil in unison, as if the entire world were a single beating heart. Modern researchers still debate whether Inti Wat Ana was a sundial or a ritual altar. Some argue over its true function, astronomy, sacrifice, or both. But perhaps it doesn't matter. Its purpose was understanding, bridging the language of light and life. You linger as the last golden thread fades from the wall. The stone cools again and darkness seeps in, gentle and familiar. You press your palm against the altar. The warmth is fading but not gone. It lingers, a memory of the sun's passing. Somewhere below, smoke rises from evening fires. The fields glow faintly under the first stars. You think of all the generations who have watched this same exchange, the sun's breath touching stone, vanishing, returning again, and you realize, the miracle isn't the precision. It's the patience. Tomorrow the light will fall a little to the north, the day a little longer. The world turns and the calendar breathes. You step outside, pull your cloak tight and whisper toward the horizon. Good night, Inti. We'll wait for your next breath. When the sun slips behind the jagged Andes, the cold climbs fast. You pull your poncho tighter and turn your gaze toward the mountains themselves, the ancient watchers. The Inca called them Apis, the spirits of the peaks. Each one had a name, a temperament, a duty. To the farmers below, they weren't just geography, they were gods that breathed through stone. If the heavens were a map of stars, the mountains were their mirrors. Every major Apu had a counterpart in the sky. A star cluster, a dark shape, a bend of the Milky Way. Together, they formed a perfect symmetry, celestial and terrestrial guardians watching each other endlessly. You might say the stars rose from the mountain's shoulders and returned to rest there at dawn. You start climbing the slope that faces east toward a ridge lined with carved stones. Each boulder has shallow grooves like channels for water or light. When the priests came here, they waited for the stars to slide into those grooves, tracing the heaven's position. By matching where a star fell in those notches, they could tell the time of year, even the day. But to them it wasn't astronomy. It was communion. The Inca didn't need telescopes. Their observatories were mountains, rivers, reflections, and human eyes tuned by generations of repetition. When a star aligned perfectly with an Apu, the message was clear. The mountain approved. It was time to act. Harvest, sow, sacrifice, celebrate. You sit down beside one of these stones. The air is sharp, dry, almost metallic. When you breathe, your lungs feel scraped clean. Beneath you, the whole valley opens. Patches of terraced fields, the silvery thread of the river, the faint smoke of distant hearths. Above, the first bright stars appear. Somewhere up there, the Southern Cross tilts slightly, its base pointing toward the Vilcanota River. Below, the river itself bends the same way, echoing the constellation's shape. To the Inca, this wasn't coincidence. It was the language of the universe. The sky's geometry carved itself into the land, and the land reflected it back like a mirror. The two worlds spoke in silence, their dialogue carried by light. You think of how the farmers below must feel when they look up from their fields. The mountain behind them rises like a wall of gods, and the stars above arrange themselves exactly to its contours. It's a cosmic partnership, one that's easy to overlook if you live elsewhere but impossible to ignore here. Each Apu had a story. Ozangate, the white giant, ruled over glaciers and rain. Sakante, his restless brother, guarded storms and lightning. Veronica watched over crops and fertility. Offerings to them weren't just rituals, they were weather insurance. When a mountain was happy, rains came on time. When it turned away, drought followed. There was one mountain the people feared more than the rest, Apu Wanakori. They said its shadow stretched farther than any other and that when it swallowed the Milky Way's reflection, sickness followed. Priests would climb its slopes carrying golden cups of chicha, pouring the liquid into fissures as if feeding a thirsty throat. And always, while the offerings burned or the smoke curled upward, someone was watching the stars above that mountain. The alignment mattered. When the constellation Yakana, the celestial llama, hovered above Ozangate's peak, it meant abundance. When Attic, the fox, lingered instead, mischief was near. The priests might send runners down to warn villages, hold your seeds. The mountain dreams badly this year. Modern scientists might call this coincidence, but to you, standing in the freezing wind, it feels logical. The entire world is pattern and echo. Perhaps the Incas didn't invent meaning in the stars, they simply recognized it sooner. You tilt your head back, watching the Milky Way rise, brighter here than anywhere on Earth. It looks almost solid, a river of powdered quartz flowing overhead. You imagine it spilling down into the valleys, filling the canals, touching every terrace. And then, for a moment, you think you see it, the reflection. The dark curve of the mountain below mirrors the pale band above perfectly. The river shimmers faintly, the stars seem to ripple in its skin. You feel dizzy, like standing between two worlds at once. This is what the priests must have felt at the Intihuatana stones, the hitching posts of the sun. They believed those stones tied the sun to the earth, keeping it from wandering too far in winter. Many were placed exactly where mountain peaks and star paths met, forming invisible cords of energy between heaven and rock. The empire was, in a sense, an enormous web, each mountain, river, and star bound together by intention. You rest your hand on the carved stone beside you, its surface still warm from the day's sun. There's a small groove worn into it, polished smooth by centuries of fingers. You trace it slowly as if unlocking a secret. Some scholars today argue about whether these alignments were intentional or symbolic. Were the Apis literal observatories or simply sacred landmarks? But maybe that question misses the heart of it. For the Inca, intention and symbol were the same thing. To build something sacred was to make it functional. To see a mountain was to feel the divine. The wind rises, sweeping your cloak against your legs. The stars pulse brighter, the river glows faintly. You realize how still the night is, so still it feels alive. You whisper to the Apu under your breath, just as your ancestors did. Old One, keep watch. Guide our hands. Let the rains return. The echo that comes back isn't sound, it's a shimmer across the Milky Way, a silent nod from sky to stone. And for that heartbeat, you know the mountain is listening. At dawn, Cusco looks like a stone sunburst, its streets radiating outward in all directions. You walk along one of those invisible rays, tracing a path that feels purposeful but endless. The locals call these sacred lines Sikhs, ancient threads connecting the city's heart to the farthest corners of the empire. To outsiders they might look like simple roads or footpaths. But to you and to the Incas they were far more than that. They were memory made physical, a map of both time and faith. Each Sikh led to a series of shrines, huacas, where rituals were performed, offerings given, and the agricultural calendar was reaffirmed. If you could float above the city you'd see it, Coricancha, the temple of the sun, glowing at the center like a golden eye, and from it 41 lines radiating outward like the veins of a living organism. Along each line the huacas were arranged in careful sequence, springs, boulders, trees, mountaintops, each with its own role in the empire's grand order. Some huacas marked the start of the planting season, others the time for harvest or for honoring the dead. Together they formed a calendar not written on paper, but carved into the earth itself. You might call it a stone almanac. Every ritual, every festival, every pause for breath, scheduled by geography. You walk one now, the Chinchesiu line that climbs toward the northwest hills. The ground crunches beneath your sandals, the air smells of clay and sun. Every few hundred steps, there's a stone platform or spring. Once, priests and farmers gathered here to perform small ceremonies, pouring chicha into the soil, scattering coca leaves, reciting prayers to the sky. Each waka had a number, a position, a meaning, all meticulously recorded by the astronomer priests. One shrine is just a smooth boulder with a faint groove carved across its face. It doesn't look like much. But when the sun rises at a certain point in the year, that groove fills with light exactly as the first rains arrive. Farmers in the valley below still say, when the stone smiles, the soil drinks. You stop there, kneeling to trace the groove with your fingertip. The stone is cold now, but you can feel the faint indentation, the work of hands that shaped it centuries ago. The Inca didn't need monuments of grandeur. They preferred precision. Their genius wasn't in building things high, it was in aligning them perfectly. From where you kneel, you can see other huacas in the distance. A carved outcrop that resembles a serpent, a spring shaded by twisted trees, a pile of quartz stones glittering like frost. Each belongs to its own Sikh, and together they create an intricate network of sacred geography. It's said that every family or Alu in the empire was responsible for maintaining one waka, cleaning it, honoring it, keeping it alive. These weren't relics, they were living beings. To neglect a waka was to neglect the gods themselves. And here's the part that always makes you smile. Even the empire's bureaucracy followed these lines. Taxes, marriages, harvest quotas, everything could be traced along the Sikhs. The empire's accountants and priests used them like an enormous spreadsheet, each shrine a data point, each offering a transaction. Somewhere between devotion and logistics, the Inca invented a kind of sacred administration. Modern scholars have tried to map the entire system. Some believe the 328 huacas corresponded to the 328 days of the Inca lunar calendar. Others think they marked constellations or agricultural phases. The truth might be all of it. You imagine the priests walking these same paths, murmuring calculations to themselves, ritual and mathematics blending into one long prayer. You continue upward, following the path until it opens onto a ridge. From here, Cusco lies below like a dark puzzle of rooftops. The Milky Way is just beginning to emerge above it, faint but visible in the twilight. For the Inca, this view wasn't just scenic, it was functional. The city's Sikhs mirrored the Milky Way's shape exactly. As above, so below once again. You sit on the ridge, light a small torch, and take out your bundle of coca leaves. You chew them slowly, feeling the familiar bitterness spread through your tongue. The wind whistles past, carrying faint echoes from the valley, dogs barking, a baby crying, a flute playing somewhere. It feels both near and impossibly far, like sound traveling through centuries. You remember what the Amautas said, the Sikhs are the threads of time. Walk them and you walk through history. Some nights you almost believe it, because if you close your eyes, the stone under your hand feels warm again. The mountains hum faintly, the stars shimmer brighter, and you realize the line you're sitting on isn't just a path, it's a heartbeat. A living pulse that ties you to everyone who's ever watched the same sky, waited for the same rains, trusted the same light. Down below, the first fires begin to glow in Cusco's streets. Each one flickers along its own seek, as if the whole city were reminding the stars where to look. You whisper to the wind, "We remember. We're still here." And somewhere high above, the Milky Way seems to bend in response, one shining thread at a time. The days grow warmer now, and the terraces shimmer with new shoots of green. The nights, though, still belong to the stars, and you can feel them guiding the rhythm of every task, even if you no longer need to look up to confirm what comes next. The sky and the soil move in perfect tandem, each anticipating the other's breath. You kneel in the field before sunrise, fingers buried in the soft earth. Beside you, your wife hums quietly, her song steady as the breeze. It's an old melody, the kind used for planting maize, where each note marks a movement. Drop seed, press soil, pat once for blessing. You both know when to start, not because anyone told you, but because the heavens said so weeks ago. The Pleiades brightened, the sun crossed between the solstice pillars, and the Milky Way bent its river toward the southern peaks. It's time. As you work, you glance toward the sky. Though it's paling now, you can still see the faint trace of the Llama constellation drifting toward the horizon. Her body darkens slightly, as if retreating into the mountain. The elders say she's descending to the underworld to give birth, leaving her blessings behind in the form of rain. Above the opposite ridge, Venus flickers, a brilliant jewel in the pre-dawn. The Inca called her Chaska, the servant of the sun. Her reappearance before planting always meant good fortune. Priests in Cusco watched her closely, timing the sowing of maize so that Chaska's first rise matched the day the emperor offered the year's first seeds. You smile thinking of that ceremony. The emperor kneeling barefoot in gold robes, pressing maize kernels into the soil while musicians play wooden flutes shaped like condor wings. Everyone, from nobles to the humblest farmers, followed suit the very next day. Even here, hundreds of miles away, you mimic that gesture now, pressing the seed gently as if echoing the empire's heartbeat. When your hands rest, you lean on your wooden tool and gaze up. The constellations you learned as a child still hang where they always have, but now you see them differently. They are less mysterious, more familial, relatives who speak through hints and habits. The dark shapes shift subtly, the bright stars hum faintly, and the entire sky feels alive with instruction. You think of how, for the Inca, astronomy wasn't a separate craft. It was woven into daily life the way threads form a textile, inseparable, purposeful. You didn't consult the stars, you lived them. Even love followed their rhythm. The young couples of the village waited for the first full moon after the harvest festival to marry, when the Milky Way looked like a silver path uniting the heavens. So their lives will always flow together, your mother used to say. At home, you've carved tiny star symbols into the beam above your doorway. A simple alignment that lets a sliver of starlight touch the wall beside your bed during the new moon. You're no priest, but it comforts you, that reminder that the same forces moving the heavens also move your sleep. And of course, the stars tell you when to rest too. When the Milky Way turns vertical in the night sky, it signals the season of quiet, the earth's sleep, when the fields must not be disturbed. Even the llamas seem to know, grazing more gently, their bells chiming in slower rhythms. The farmers gather then in the plaza, bringing baskets of chuno and gourds of chicha. They toast the passing year, watch the constellations drift, and speak softly about the balance between sky and seed. The phrase they use is always the same: the corn grows in both worlds. They mean the upper and lower realms, but also the cosmic and the human, the dream and the deed. You remember one year long ago when a foreign priest, one of the newcomers from across the sea, asked why the Inca mixed religion with farming. He thought the stars were too far to matter. You had smiled and told him, "They're not far. They're right here in the water." You pointed to the irrigation channel reflecting the Milky Way, but he didn't understand. Perhaps he couldn't. Some modern scientists, centuries later, would finally see what you meant. They'd find that certain constellations rise at exactly the same time as shifts in rainfall and temperature. Real, measurable correlations. They'd marvel that the Inca calendar, so poetic and symbolic, was also astonishingly accurate. They'd call it ethnoastronomy. You would call it common sense. As the sun crests the mountain, you sit back and watch the light roll across the terraces. The maize leaves tremble, catching the gold like mirrors. It's the same scene your ancestors saw and their ancestors before them. The only difference is that now you understand why they smiled during this moment, the instant when heaven and earth share the same color. Your wife laughs softly, brushing dust from her hands. "The sky likes our field," she says. You nod, glancing up. The last visible stars blink out, retreating into daylight. You whisper a quiet thank you, not because you expect an answer but because gratitude keeps the cycle smooth. Later tonight, when the fires die and the wind hushes, you'll look up again. You'll find the llama, the snake, the fox, all still there keeping watch. You'll feel the same quiet reassurance that everything above is reflected below. And you'll fall asleep knowing that even in darkness, the stars are still at work, marking your seasons, blessing your crops, and in their patient turning, writing your story into the sky. Some nights the sky goes wrong. You feel it before you see it. The stillness, the strange hue of twilight, the faint metallic taste in the air. The farmers grow uneasy. The llamas huddle too close together, and even the wind seems to lose direction. When you look up, something feels missing. The stars that should be sharp and infinite are dull, blurred, dimmed as if behind smoke. It's unsettling. For people whose lives depend on the heavens, a broken sky is like silence to a singer. The old ones mutter prayers, clutching amulets. Children ask why the river of the Milky Way has faded, and no one answers. The Inca had no word for volcano, not in the sense of distant mountains spewing ash. But when great eruptions happened across the world, in lands you will never see, the haze reached even here. The sky became a ghost of itself, veiled by unseen hands. The priests at Coricancha would climb their towers, look through their golden tubes and find their markers lost in a milky fog. The chronicles say there were years when the heavens hid themselves entirely. One Spanish visitor later wrote of how the Indians wept for their stars, believing the gods had turned their faces away. And indeed the crops suffered. Rains came wrong. The sun looked pale and weary. You remember one such season vividly. The Pleiades never reappeared on time. When they did, they glimmered weakly, almost ashamed. The Amautas gathered in the plaza, robes dusted gray with ash from unseen skies, and whispered among themselves. No one knew if the gods were angry or merely tired. In moments like that, humans reached upward with trembling hands, hoping to fix what was never theirs to control. The empire responded with ritual. All over the highlands, fires were lit, clean, slow-burning, made of llama dung and twisted herbs. Smoke rose straight into the murk, offerings meant to coax the heavens back into clarity. Priests sang to Inti, to Mayu, to the hidden stars, asking forgiveness for unknown sins. You joined them, your voice thin in the wind. The ceremony lasted days. On the fourth morning, the sun rose dull red, and for the first time in weeks, you saw a handful of stars piercing through the haze. The people gasped, wept, cheered. The priests declared that the gods had heard the music of mortals again. You wonder now if it was faith or coincidence, or if there's even a difference. Later you learned that when the Milky Way disappears, the rivers below act strangely too. Water flows slower. Springs dry early. Farmers say the celestial river has been turned upside down, its waters lost in the underworld. To fix it, you must remind it of its reflection. So the elders gathered bowls of clear water and placed them on temple steps, mirrors for the invisible sky. Night after night, they watched the surfaces shimmer faintly, waiting for the heavens to recognize themselves again. There's beauty in that kind of persistence, trying to heal the universe with patience instead of panic. Modern scholars might call those dark years coincidence. Volcanic eruptions far away, perhaps in the tropics, had cloaked the atmosphere in ash, scattering light and tricking the eyes. The Incas, unaware of such distant cataclysms, interpreted what they saw through faith and balance. They believed everything in the world had meaning. If the sky dimmed, something on earth had fallen out of harmony. Maybe they were right in a way. Maybe human imbalance echoes upward, just as celestial imbalance echoes down. You remember standing one night beside your field during that dim season. The stars were faint, but you still planted. You whispered to the soil anyway, your voice shaky but steady, "I trust you even if you can't see me." The next morning, a fine drizzle fell. The first in weeks. Sometimes the heavens test you. You think of how strange it is that the same people who could align temples to a fraction of a sunbeam also accepted mystery without anger. They didn't demand certainty. When the stars dimmed, they sang louder. When the rains faltered, they prayed deeper. They didn't separate belief from observation. They braided them like the cords of a quipu. Even now, centuries later, when scientists dig through records and ice cores and trace sulfur dust back to those same years, they're astonished at how accurately the Inca chronicled the dimming sky. Their stories were not myth. They were data in poetic form. As the night stretches long, you stare upward again. The stars are faint tonight, but they're there. You can feel them. The air smells of wet clay and wood smoke, the scent of life continuing despite confusion. Maybe the lesson isn't to read the stars for answers, but to stay faithful when they go silent. You lie down in the grass, arms folded beneath your head, and close your eyes. In the distance, thunder grumbles once, softly. Perhaps Apu Sakante is clearing his throat. Perhaps the sky, having hidden too long, is about to speak again. The wind stirs the grass around you, whispering through the stalks like a slow, reassuring breath. The world, it seems, has remembered its rhythm after all. When the skies finally cleared, the stars looked closer than ever, sharp, bright, almost too vivid to believe. For weeks, people walked with their heads tilted upward, as if reuniting with family after a long absence. Even the priests, normally solemn, smiled openly during evening prayers. The gods had returned. The world was readable again. But this time the sky felt different. The people had learned humility in its absence. From then on, the Amautas, the wise ones, decided the knowledge of the stars must never rest in just a few hands. It had to flow like water through generations. So they began to teach. Not in grand classrooms, but in whispers, songs, and stories told beside cooking fires. You remember your grandmother's voice as clearly as the constellations themselves. Each evening, after the fields fell silent, she'd sit near the door, grinding maize with the slow rhythm of centuries, and talk about the stars as if they were old friends. She never used diagrams, never pointed at charts, she simply told you stories. The llama up there, she'd say, drinks from the sky river so our real llamas never go thirsty. The fox hides when he's ashamed, so if you see him vanish, don't start any new work that night. Each story carried a rule, a reminder, a rhythm of behavior. Over time, the lessons built themselves into your habits until you no longer needed to think about them. You just look up and know. It's easy to forget how much knowledge lives in memory alone. The Incas had no books to pass down, only breath. But breath can be powerful when repeated enough times. Entire calendars, systems of irrigation, even predictions of drought, all encoded in songs. Some tunes were for work, others for worship, and a few for pure remembrance. When you hear the farmers singing at dusk, you're not just hearing music, you're hearing astronomy in disguise. And sometimes the stars were painted, not on parchment but on pottery. You've seen those ceramic jars, the araballos, their necks tall and curved like swans. Around their bellies swirl symbols, twin rivers, crosses, dots, llamas, spirals. At first glance they look decorative. But if you trace them carefully you'll notice something uncanny. Their patterns match the night sky in miniature. The potters were recording constellations in clay, each vessel a quiet echo of the heavens. When an Amayuta handed such a vessel to a younger apprentice, it wasn't a gift, it was an initiation. The apprentice would turn it slowly under the firelight, learning to match each mark to its celestial counterpart. The bright star near the rim? That's Chaska, the morning herald. The dark patch along the base? That's Yakana's belly, the shadow of the llama. The young one would memorize them, just as you once memorized your grandmother's stories. You think now of how fragile that system was, and how strong. Fragile because it depended entirely on memory, strong because memory, when loved, never dies. Even when the Spanish arrived with paper and ink, when they mocked the sky songs and called them superstition, the farmers kept whispering. They just changed the rhythm, hid the meanings. Some sang in Quechua lullabies so their children would learn unconsciously, dreaming of stars without realizing they were studying them. Others carved small constellations on weaving looms, embedding them into patterns of textiles, camouflaged astronomy disguised as art. You once saw an old woman from the high villages spread a woven cloth under the open sky. Its red and black diamonds gleamed faintly in firelight. She pointed to one pattern, 7 tiny white knots, and whispered, "Coiler, the sisters." The Pleiades again, eternal, hidden in thread. When asked why she still wove them, she only smiled. Because forgetting makes the sky lonely. That answer stayed with you. Even centuries later, Quechua farmers still look up in June to greet the Pleiades, still murmur the same phrases your ancestors did. Modern eyes might call it folklore, but it's something deeper, an unbroken chain of observation, humility, and love. The language has shifted, the tools changed, but the gaze remains the same. You think of what's lost when people trade memory for convenience. The Incas didn't need libraries because they were libraries. Their voices, their crafts, their rituals, all repositories of experience. Knowledge wasn't stored, it was sung. Now, as you sit under the same sky that once hid itself from the world, you feel an odd gratitude. The stars returned, but they brought something better than brightness. They brought reverence. The Amautas passed down not only what the heavens showed but also how to wait when they go dim. You lie back in the grass, closing your eyes to the cool wind. Behind your lids, you can still see your grandmother's hands, her bracelets glinting in firelight as she stirred maize. "Always look up," she'd say, "but listen first." The stars speak soft. The mountains hum faintly. The constellations drift. Somewhere, far above, the celestial llama tilts her head as if listening too. And below her, you whisper your promise to remember. The stars are bright again, and the empire hums with rhythm. From the high plateaus to the far coastal valleys, messages move as if the heavens themselves are speaking through human feet. You can hear them some nights, the soft thump of sandals against stone, the sharp call of a conch horn echoing across the ravines. These are the chasquis, the messengers, the night runners of the Inca. You've seen them before, lean figures wrapped in wool cloaks, carrying little more than a sling, a pouch of coca leaves, and the breath of the gods in their lungs. They run along the royal roads, Kapak Nan, a web of stone veins stretching over 30,000 kilometers, tying the empire together from the deserts of Nazca to the snows of Quito. By day they carry the emperor's orders. But by night they carry something stranger, news of the stars. Each runner knows where to stop. Along the roads are thousands of tampas, tiny relay stations where another messenger waits, listening for the faintest echo of footsteps. When one arrives, breathless and wild-eyed, he hands off the message, gulps water, and rests. The next leaps into motion before the dust settles. In this way, the word of the heavens travels faster than the wind itself. You imagine one of those messages tonight, a warning from Cusco's priest that the Yacana constellation has shifted early, or that the Pleiades have dimmed. Within a day, every farmer from the jungle's edge to the salt plains will know to delay planting, or to hold a ritual of rain. The empire breathes as one organism, its lungs spread across the mountains. Sometimes the messages are more mysterious. A runner might arrive at your village at dusk, his face drawn but glowing, and announce that the fox has stolen a star. That's the omen for caution. Expect hunger, hold your maize, watch the skies. You and your neighbors would gather at the river, light torches, and scatter petals so the gods would find their way home. To modern ears these sound like legends. But the chasquis were real, and so were the signs they carried. Archaeologists have found their road markers, their rest houses, even their woven sandals preserved in dry mountain air. Yet what no excavation can reveal is the tone of their voices when they delivered those messages. The blend of fear, awe, and trust in something far larger than any empire. You once met an old man who claimed to descend from generations of chasquis. His great-grandfather, he said, could cross 60 miles in a single night, guided not by landmarks but by the constellations. The stars ran with him, he told you, tapping his chest. They showed him which ridge was safe and which river was angry. You believe him. Because when you've lived your life by the heavens, they never feel far away. At the larger stations near Cusco, the priests themselves received these messages. There were no letters, only words carried by breath or nodded in quipus. Some chords recorded simple things, dates, names, routes, but others, the ones the astronomer priests kept, held the calendar of omens. One knot for a star's rising, another for its disappearance, a cluster for how bright it had seemed. Those knots became the pulse of the empire's decisions. When to plant, when to build, when to go to war. You can picture them in the temple's candlelight, fingers tracing those threads like reading a heartbeat. When they found a pattern of warning, say a star fading too soon, they'd summon the runners and send word to every corner of the Andes. The heavens ask for patience. Wait for Inti's sign. And somewhere far away, a farmer like you would pause mid-swing, lean on his hoe and glance upward. You wouldn't need to question why. The message had already been written across the night sky. The priests only confirmed what the heart already suspected. There's a beauty in that kind of faith, the way a civilization so vast could coordinate without noise, without panic, guided only by observation and trust. You think of how modern nations struggle to move in unison even with wires, machines, and light-speed communication. The Inca did it with breath, muscle, and starlight. Sometimes you wonder what those runners thought as they moved through the darkness, the mountains rising like frozen waves around them. Did they feel afraid, alone, or exhilarated? Did they ever stop mid-journey, tilt their heads upward, and feel as if the stars themselves were escorting them down the path? Maybe they did. Maybe that's why they never lost their way. The stars were their signposts, the Milky Way their road map, the southern constellations their compass. They didn't just follow the heavens, they were part of the same system of motion. Each runner a heartbeat in the Milky Way's long, pulsing artery. When you close your eyes, you can almost hear it, the steady footfalls on stone, echoing up through the valleys, carrying not just messages but the breath of the cosmos itself. The empire hums. The stars gleam. And somewhere between the sky and the soil, a single runner looks up and smiles. The heavens are running with him. The stars are steady again and the soil beneath your feet feels ready. The air smells of ash and earth after the season's first lightning storm. You press your hand into the damp furrow and feel the pulse of the ground, warm, alive, humming faintly as if answering the heavens. Up above, the Milky Way tilts southward, the Yacana Llama drinking deeply from the celestial river. The priests in Cusco say this is when the world's breath runs fullest, when the Mayu above and the rivers below flow together in harmony. That's when planting begins, but not before something more important: payment. The Inca call it Ani, reciprocity, the eternal exchange between beings. You give so the world may give back. And even the stars expect their due. You've spent all morning preparing the offerings. A gourd of chicha, thick and sweet, bubbles gently by the fire. Beside it, a small clay bowl holds maize kernels, a few coca leaves and a fragment of llama fat, the gifts that will feed the mountains. At dusk, you'll bury them in the center of the field under the first visible stars. That act isn't superstition, it's contract. When you plant, you promise to care for the soil, to honor the sky, to keep balance. In return, the world promises life. You learned that from your father, who learned it from his. He used to say, "We don't own the fields, we borrow them from the stars." It sounded poetic then. Now, as you kneel here, it feels literal. The constellations mark the timing, the rain answers their call, the crops obey. You are not the master of the land, you are its negotiator. As twilight deepens, the ceremony begins. Your family gathers, silent, patient. Your wife hums the low tune of the earth offering song. The children sprinkle crushed maize petals into the irrigation canal. You light a small fire, feeding it sprigs of dried herbs that pop and hiss in the thin air. When the smoke rises, you tilt your bowl toward the sky and pour the first sip of chicha into the soil. It foams and vanishes instantly, drinking down into the roots of the world. Drink well, you whisper, and send the rains gently. In the Inca world, work was never just labor. It was moral exchange. You didn't plow alone, you plowed with the cosmos. If the stars looked dim or the river ran low, it meant someone somewhere had broken Ani. Maybe they had taken more than they gave, spoken harshly to the soil, neglected an offering. To restore it, you shared what you had, with neighbors, with strangers, with the gods. Ani wasn't religion, it was survival. The entire empire functioned on it. Farmers exchanged labor across fields, herders shared grazing routes, families lent each other tools. Even the emperor owed the heavens tribute. During great droughts, the priests would climb to mountain shrines carrying gold bowls filled with milk and honey. They'd pour them into fissures on the sacred peaks, feeding the apis so they'd remember to feed humankind. At other times, they offered llama blood, its steam rising like incense into the thin air. Payment for the water, they said. Debt to the clouds. Tonight you keep it simpler. A sip of chicha, a handful of leaves, a whispered thanks. When you finish, you press your palm to the ground until you feel its warmth seep into your skin. That's when you sense it, a faint vibration like the distant murmur of water underground. Some say it's the breath of Pachamama, the Earth Mother herself. Others think it's just the echo of your heartbeat. Either way, you know you're heard. As you stand, a faint breeze stirs the grass. The stars overhead glint brighter as if nodding approval. You've kept your promise, and the universe in its quiet way has acknowledged it. You think of how different this is from the new gods brought later by strangers, how those gods demand obedience while yours expect respect. The Inca didn't pray for miracles, they maintained relationships. Their faith was a form of accounting, where gratitude was currency and care was interest. Modern people might laugh at the idea that stars expect reciprocity. But they still track energy and debt, still talk about balance, still chase harmony, just with different vocabulary. You smile because to you it's all the same. Give and receive. Take and pay back. The cosmos runs on that rhythm, and so do you. As night deepens, the Milky Way brightens. Its reflection ripples faintly in the irrigation canal, shimmering with the same silvery hue. You realize then that your offering has already been accepted. The river itself glows. The llamas bleat softly, and somewhere in the distance, thunder rolls, a promise from the clouds. You whisper a final line to the darkness. We plant not for us but for balance. And with that, you turn toward home, leaving behind a field that now belongs equally to you, the earth and the stars. The night feels endless tonight, so clear that the stars look alive. You lie on your back, eyes open to the vault above, and the longer you stare, the more you feel it, the sense that something up there is staring back. The Inca never believed the heavens were passive. The sky wasn't a silent ceiling, it was a living mind. When your grandmother said, "Don't speak ill beneath a full moon," she remembers? She meant it literally. Every star, every dark patch, every flicker of light was consciousness. Some kind, some mischievous, some ancient beyond words. The people didn't just read the sky, they performed for it, obeyed it, courted it. The idea that the heavens were watching was not frightening, it was comforting. To live under observation meant to live within care. When the Milky Way arched directly overhead, it wasn't just a river, it was an eye, its mirrored reflection in the rivers below forming the gaze of the world itself. The sky looks at you through water, the priest said, so keep the water clean. You remember one festival night in Cusco when the people reenacted this relationship. Thousands gathered in the main plaza, carrying torches and mirrored bowls of water. As the sun fell, the priests began chanting low, rhythmic lines, half prayer, half reminder. At the climax they lifted the bowls to the stars. For a brief moment, the light of the constellations shimmered in each bowl, as if 1,000 eyes had opened. The people called it Nawi Punche, the Day of the Eye. Even far from the city you felt that same gaze. On nights when you plant or gather herbs, when you pour an offering into the earth, you sense a quiet awareness pressing down, not heavy but present, like a hand on your shoulder. The stars see, the wind listens, the mountains remember. It makes lying and greed almost impossible. You can't deceive under that kind of intimacy. That's the heart of Inca morality, harmony through mutual observation. The people watched the heavens and the heavens watched them. Every act of respect echoed upward. Every carelessness echoed back. Some of the priests believed each person had their own star, a luminous twin that mirrored your life's light. When you were born, it brightened. When you died, it dimmed and fell toward the horizon, returning to the underworld river. The more generous you were, the brighter your star stayed, guiding your descendants through seasons yet unborn. Your deeds rise faster than smoke, one priest told a farmer once. Be careful what you feed the sky. You think of that often. Especially now, when the nights feel so transparent you could almost reach up and touch that twin. Maybe it's above you still, patient, recording your offerings, your silences, your laughter. There's comfort in believing the universe keeps notes. At times though, the sky's watchfulness could also be warning. When comets streaked across the dark, the people whispered that they were the tears of stars displeased with humankind. The empire would send runners to the mountains, carrying white feathers and golden cups to appease the heavens. They'd wait until the comet's tail faded before resuming ceremonies. The priests would say, "The stars judge only imbalance, never mistake." Modern astronomers explain it differently: icy bodies, solar light, dust tails. You know that. Yet there's something poetic that survives. Maybe the ancients were right in their own way. Maybe imbalance anywhere in the system, celestial or human, ripples through the whole. A drought here, a flicker there, a faint reminder that everything feels everything. You tilt your head toward the Milky Way and notice how it seems to bend, ever so slightly, around the dark shape of the celestial llama. That curve, the cosmic gaze, feels almost intentional. You whisper softly, "I see you too." In that moment it's hard to tell who is the observer and who is the observed. The light that left those stars thousands of years ago just now reaches your eyes. Your small reflection in a stream travels upward to meet it. Somewhere between the two touch. That's what the Amautas meant when they said, "The heavens and humans breathe through one another." The Inca never believed themselves small. They believed themselves part. The same dust that forms the Milky Way runs through your bones. The same water that clouds drift through once lay in the celestial river. You close your eyes and let that thought settle. The wind softens, the night hums. The stars are watching, they do so kindly. You feel no fear, only belonging. Then came the strangers, the ones who didn't listen to the sky. At first you didn't understand them. Their skin pale, their breath strange, their eyes darting like men who'd lost their horizon. They rode animals larger than llamas, and their shadows stretched wrong in the light. When they looked up, they squinted as though the heavens themselves had betrayed them. You could tell immediately, they were not people who trusted the stars. The Spanish chroniclers who followed them into Cusco wrote down what they saw, but their quills turned wonder into confusion. "These people," one wrote, "worship the heavens and speak to rivers as if they had ears." Another mocked how the priests measured light with stone and shadow. They thought the Inca watched the sky out of superstition, not science. They didn't understand that those measurements were the empire's mathematics, its logic, its time. The conquerors arrived with crosses that pointed not to the stars but to the earth, symbols of weight, of finality. They built churches over temples, hammering the stone where sunlight used to pass through sacred windows. The golden disk of Inti, once the heart of the Coricancha, was taken and melted down into coins. They called it purification. You called it blindness. One missionary recorded in disbelief that the local farmers consulted the heavens before plowing. He claimed they feared angering the sun by planting too early. His tone was mocking, but you can almost hear the jealousy between the lines. Perhaps he envied that your world still spoke to you. His didn't. When they asked the Amautas how they knew when to sow, one elder pointed upward and said simply, "We listen." The Spaniard, impatient, wrote, "The savage speaks of hearing stars." You wonder if he ever realized the irony, writing about a people he could not hear. Still, the old astronomers resisted quietly. They stopped carving sun windows into stone and began weaving them into cloth instead. They taught their children new songs that sounded like Catholic hymns but hid the old meanings beneath. Ave Maria by day, praise to Inti by night. The constellations became saints, renamed but unforgotten. The Llama became the Virgin's cloak. The Milky Way became the path of souls. The sky stayed alive, just speaking softer. Even as churches rose over the Huacas, farmers still looked upward at dawn before taking their tools. Old habits don't die, they root themselves in silence. The conquerors measured time with bells, but the fields still obeyed the Pleiades. When the priest said, "It's the feast of St. John," the farmers nodded, knowing it was also the solstice. 2 calendars, 1 truth. And yet some knowledge did vanish. The Sikh lines faded from memory, replaced by city streets that led nowhere sacred. The Intihuatana stones, those that hadn't been destroyed, were left to lichen and rain. The empire's celestial conversation became a whisper, then an echo, then a rumor. The stars grew lonelier again. But not all was lost. Even as the colonizers filled their books with confusion, they accidentally preserved fragments of your world. Scribbles about how the Inca watched the Pleiades to predict weather, how they timed festivals with the solstice, how they believed the Milky Way was a river in heaven. They called those beliefs curious customs, never realizing they were recording one of humanity's most elegant sciences. Centuries later, scholars would unearth those dusty manuscripts, translate them and blink in astonishment. The Inca weren't guessing, they were calculating. Their superstitions predicted El Niño patterns with uncanny precision. Their idols marked solar alignments within degrees of accuracy modern instruments confirmed. The Amautas had been right all along. You think about that sometimes, lying under the same sky those strangers dismissed. They saw only emptiness above. You see eternity. Maybe that's why their empire needed clocks. They had lost the rhythm the Inca still heard in wind and light. The irony is almost funny now. Those who conquered your temples ended up using telescopes to rediscover what your ancestors already knew. That the stars are maps, the rivers are mirrors, and the universe is not a stage for man but a dance he joins briefly. You remember your grandmother's words, "The sky forgets nothing." Maybe that's why, even today, travelers in Cusco still pause when they see the first star appear over Sacsayhuaman. Maybe some instincts survive all the rewriting. Maybe memory, once breathed into stone, never truly leaves. You close your eyes, hearing the echo of bells from the cathedral that now stands where Coricancha once gleamed. But you can still feel the sun's breath under its stones, still sense the gold buried in shadow. The priests may have stolen the light, but they could never teach the sky to forget. Above you the Pleiades glitter once more, bright, sharp and alive. Their message remains unchanged and you smile softly at the thought. The stars always wait for those who still listen. You leave Cusco behind and climb higher still, into the teeth of the mountains, where the world thins into silence. The trail twists between cliffs veined with ice. Condors circle above, their wings carving the same slow arcs the constellations draw at night. Here, above the valleys of maize and song, stands Machu Picchu, a city built for both the living and the light. By day its stones seem ordinary enough, gray terraces, steps, walls. But when dusk arrives and the air cools to silver, you begin to understand why the Amautas called it the Observatory of the Condor. The place is tuned, like an instrument, to the rhythm of the sky. You wait for darkness. The tourists are gone, the llamas settled. Only wind and waterfall speak now. As the first stars appear, the architecture begins to reveal its second purpose. The walls are not random, they're sightlines. Doorways frame the southern cross. Windows slice the horizon exactly where the sun rises on solstice morning. Even the terraces align with invisible diagonals leading toward peaks sacred to the Apis. The Intihuatana stone sits on the highest ledge, carved from a single block of granite. The guides call it a sundial, but that word is too small. It's a language device, a hinge between worlds. When sunlight strikes its facets, shadows form perfect triangles that point toward the cardinal directions. During equinox, the stone casts almost no shadow at all, just light balanced on light. To the Inca, that meant harmony, the moment when day and night shake hands. You run your palm along its surface. It's smoother than it looks, warm even in the chill. Centuries of sun have seeped into it. You can feel that same warmth sliding into your skin, as if the stone remembers every dawn it has ever met. Some archaeologists still argue about its purpose. They bring instruments, laser scanners, theories. Was it for measuring time? Tracking the stars? Channeling energy? The debates echo the same problem the Spaniards had. They look at the stone, not through it. The Inca never built for measurement alone. They built for participation. To touch the Intihuatana was to complete the circuit between human and cosmos. It was the sun's tether, the knot that kept the world from drifting away. You stand where the priests once stood at dawn, the Milky Way sprawled above like smoke frozen in glass. Its curve seems to echo the Urubamba River below, a silver ribbon snaking through the valley. Up and down, heaven and earth mirror one another perfectly. You remember what the farmers always said, the river drinks what the sky spills. Tonight you see it clearly for the first time. The moon slides out from behind a peak, spilling light across the terraces. Each stone glows faintly, revealing patterns invisible by day, grooves, channels, cuts that trace constellations. It's as if the builders laid a map of the heavens onto the mountain itself. The celestial llama stretches across one wall, the fox hides in another's shadow. Machu Picchu isn't just built under the sky, it is the sky folded into rock. You picture the priests who once watched from this height. They would have seen everything, the stars, the clouds drifting below, the glow of lightning deep in the valleys. No wonder they believed this was the navel between worlds. From here you can touch both the underworld mist and the eternal flame above. For a long moment you say nothing. You only listen. The city hums, a frequency too low for ears, a vibration that seems to come from inside the stones. Maybe it's imagination. Or maybe it's the old rhythm of the universe, the same pulse that guided the planting songs, the same breath that whispered through the Intihuatana corridor. Far away, thunder mutters. A storm gathers over the Amazon, flashing faint light against the clouds. You wonder if the priests once watched that too, using lightning as punctuation marks in their heavenly script. The gods are writing tonight, your grandmother would have said. You tilt your head back and close your eyes. The air tastes clean, wet moss, granite, wind. For the first time you sense why this place was hidden for so long. The mountain wanted quiet, not conquest. The stars above it needed a listener, not a builder. When you open your eyes again, the Milky Way has shifted slightly, sliding toward the western ridge. The Yacana llama grazes right above the Intihuatana, her dark neck bent as though drinking from the river below. You almost laugh. The alignment is perfect. Maybe that's the secret everyone missed. Not mathematics, not worship, but humor. The sky enjoys small jokes too. The wind rises, cold and thin, carrying a faint scent of rain from the jungle. You know what that means. The cycle continues. Tomorrow the river will swell, the terraces will glisten, and the mountain will hum a little louder. You whisper into the dark, we're still listening. Somewhere between the peaks, thunder answers, soft, approving. And far above, the stars blink once, like eyes that never stopped watching. Morning in the high Andes begins with silver light and the scent of wet grass. You wake to the sound of a shepherd's flute drifting from somewhere far below. The tune is simple, repeating, more a hum than a melody, but you recognize it. It's the same rhythm the farmers have played for centuries, a song for the dawn, for the stars that fade reluctantly into blue. The Quechua farmers still read the heavens. They may use plastic buckets now instead of clay jars, but their eyes, those ancient instruments, have never forgotten the language of light. You walk down to a village perched on a hillside where potatoes grow in terraces stacked like stairways. An old man stands by the field, hands behind his back, face turned toward the sky. Nawi Kanti, he says softly, the eye of dawn. You follow his gaze. The Pleiades have just reappeared, bright as diamonds against the thinning dark. They came early this year, he murmurs. It will rain more than usual. You nod and realize he's not guessing. He's observing with the same precision as the Amautas of old. Scientists have since confirmed what his ancestors always knew. When thin, high clouds blur the Pleiades in June, drought follows. When the stars shine sharp, rain comes strong. In his quiet sentence lies 1,000 years of empirical truth. A young woman nearby fills a jug from the irrigation canal. The water mirrors the fading constellations. She pauses before dipping her hands, whispers a few words, half prayer, half greeting. Her grandmother taught her that before you take from the river, you say thank you to its twin in the sky. To outsiders it's ritual. To her it's respect. The fields around her are dotted with tiny offerings, flowers pressed into the dirt, leaves folded neatly under stones. Children do it instinctively, copying their elders. For Pachamama, they say laughing. But you notice something else. They time these gestures with the stars' appearances. When the Milky Way turns vertical above the ridge, the planting songs begin. When it flattens, the harvest ones return. The sky's posture still dictates human rhythm, the way a conductor's hand moves an orchestra centuries after the sheet music was written. As the sun rises, the old man points with his chin to a distant peak. That one is Apu Azengate, he says. When his white shoulder glows, the storms are near. You can see it clearly, the glacier catching the sun, a gleam so bright it hurts. He smiles faintly. He's watching us still. Always has. You think of how little has changed. The temples are ruins now, the Sikh lines invisible beneath modern streets, but the practice survives in gestures. How people tilt their heads before beginning work, how they hum softly when the first star appears. The ritual persists not because it's commanded, but because it comforts. The farmers say it keeps the world polite. In another field, two children chase a herd of llamas while their mother gathers herbs by moonlight. When she finishes, she faces east, touches her lips, then the ground. The movement is quick, almost unconscious, a remnant of something vast. You imagine an Amayuda watching her and nodding with quiet pride. The chain remains unbroken. Even technology, the new magic, has not replaced the old reading. Some young Quechua farmers use weather apps now. But when the signal drops, and it often does among these ridges, they look up, not down. The sky is better Wi-Fi, one jokes. You laugh, but it's true. The stars have never failed to send a signal. When night falls again, you sit with the villagers around a small fire. The mountains fade into darkness, but the heavens bloom like a garden. A teenager plucks a guitar and sings an old Quechua verse that translates roughly to: the corn listens when the stars bend low. The river speaks when the Milky Way glows. We plant our lives where the heavens sough. You close your eyes and listen. It's not nostalgia. It's continuity. The Inca sky never really vanished. It simply learned new words. Above, the Yacana llama has risen again, her silhouette easy to see against the Milky Way's bright current. Someone points her out and the children giggle. She's drinking the river, one says. The adults smile but don't correct them, because that's exactly what she's doing, as she always has. You lean back, feel the heat of the fire on your face, the cool wind on your neck. The stars shimmer overhead, timeless, tireless. Around you, life continues exactly as it did centuries ago, guided by that eternal correspondence between heaven and earth. The villagers begin to drift home one by one. The fire dies down. You stay for a while longer, watching the reflection of the Milky Way ripple across the canal. The same sky your ancestors read now reads you. You feel its patience, its memory, its quiet approval. The constellations are teachers still, their lessons unchanged. Work with the world, not against it. Offer gratitude. Move in rhythm. Listen. The last flame flickers out. The stars take over the night again, brilliant and ancient. And beneath them, the fields whisper softly, as if answering in kind. It's long past midnight when the wind begins to rise over the terraces. The stars above are so bright they seem to hum, blue fire, white fire, steady as breath. You've lost count of how many nights you've spent like this, eyes tilted upward, feeling the world align around you. But tonight something feels different. The air is crisp and new, as if waiting to tell you a secret. You lie still, letting the world settle into its rhythm. The Milky Way glows directly overhead, its river wide and luminous. The Pleiades sparkle clear and sharp, no haze this year. The Southern Cross points cleanly toward the snow peaks. Everything fits. Everything sings. It's easy in moments like this to forget how fragile it all is. The balance between soil and sky, light and rain, time and memory. The Inca never forgot. Their astronomers didn't just admire the heavens. They studied them the way a doctor studies a pulse. Every shimmer meant something. Every faint variation was a heartbeat of the world. Centuries later, scientists would point their instruments at those same stars and discover something uncanny. The Inca were right again. The old practice of reading the Pleiades for weather? It matches data about high-altitude cirrus clouds and sea temperature anomalies in the Pacific, the same conditions that predict El Niño. The celestial llama and fox of the Milky Way? They correspond perfectly to the dark molecular clouds in our galaxy, real concentrations of dust and gas. The stone windows of Coricantia? Their alignments trace the solstices with a precision within a single degree. What modern science calls observation, the Inca called relationship. You think of the Amautas, the old astronomer priests, their faces half lit by torches as they watched the heavens. They didn't have telescopes, yet they saw deeper. They knew the sky wasn't distant, it was participatory. Every pattern up there had a counterpart down here. The logic of reciprocity, Ani, extended into the cosmos itself. Modern climatologists studying the Andes now return to the same places your ancestors once stood. They ask the same questions. Will the rains come early? Will the frost stay late? And they still find their answers in the sky. They watch the brightness of the Pleiades through satellite data, confirming what farmers like you already knew. The Inca didn't just read weather, they read climate centuries before anyone wrote the word. You smile softly at that thought. The world is finally catching up to the stars. Some anthropologists wonder how much the Inca understood of astronomy in the mathematical sense. Did they know about axial tilt, orbital cycles, precession? Perhaps not as numbers, but they felt it. They saw that the sun's path slid across the mountains through the year, that the shadows lengthened, that the stars migrated. They didn't explain it in equations, they sang it. To them, knowledge wasn't something to own, it was something to live. You look again at the Milky Way. For the first time, you realize that its light is ancient, thousands of years old, traveling all this way to meet your eyes. The same photons might have left their stars when Machu Picchu was still alive with prayers and drums. You feel dizzy thinking about it, how every glimmer you see is history still arriving. The Inca understood that too, though they said it differently. They believed starlight was ancestral memory, constantly returning to remind the world who it was. That's why their temples open to the east, to welcome not just the sun's rebirth each morning, but the return of ancient light. You think of how all the fragments, rituals, songs, carvings, form a single system of understanding. They weren't simply worshipping the stars, they were conversing with them. Inca science and spirituality were never rivals, they were two sides of the same mirror. And perhaps that's the lesson still waiting for us. That maybe true knowledge isn't about conquering mystery but cooperating with it. The wind grows softer. The mountains shine faintly under starlight. You can almost imagine the Amautas still there, measuring the shadows, humming their prayers, nodding at the precision of it all. The line between them and you blurs. Because even now, centuries later, you're still watching, still listening. You carry the same questions they did. Will the rains come? Will the balance hold? And you find the same comfort they found in looking up. The science beneath the stars and the soul within them are the same thing. One explains the rhythm, the other teaches you how to dance to it. You exhale slowly, your breath turning to mist that drifts upward, vanishing into the same sky that gave it to you. Above, the Pleiades wink once more, steady, wise, and patient. They have been waiting for this moment, for you to look up again and finally see both truth and tenderness in their light. The night, the stars, the earth, all one continuous conversation, still speaking, still alive. The stars have finished their nightly sweep when you finally realize how long you've been lying here. The mountains around you are silhouettes now, dark shoulders rising against a horizon of pale fire. Dawn is coming, slow and merciful. You take a deep breath, feel the cold air fill your lungs, and understand what the Inca must have felt every morning when light returned. Gratitude first, words later. The sky fades from indigo to rose. The Milky Way dissolves like smoke, leaving only the faintest glimmer of its river across the east. You know that up there the constellations still move, even when you can't see them. Their stories go on without you, just as they did before you were born and as they will after. It's peaceful, this knowing. For all their precision, the Inca astronomers never pretended to own the stars. They were guests beneath them. They didn't ask why the universe existed. They asked how best to live inside it. That humility might be their greatest science. The first sunlight touches the terraces, gilding each stone like a slow blessing. The river below glints, bending gently, the same curve as the Mayu above. You see it now, the endless reflection. Heaven mirrored in earth, earth mirrored in heaven, both watching, both forgiving. You whisper a small thanks, not to any single god, but to the balance that holds everything in place. Somewhere in the distance, a shepherd's horn sounds. The llamas move, their bells chiming softly. The world wakes again, the same world that has turned under Inca skies for 1,000 years. The people who once mapped constellations with shadows and songs are gone, but their rhythm remains, beating in the breath of the Andes, in the tilt of a farmer's head as he checks the dawn, in every field that still waits for starlight's permission to grow. You realize then that the question was never, why did Inca farmers read the stars? It was, how could anyone live without them? Their world was an orchestra, each instrument tuned to another. To plow was to echo a constellation, to harvest was to imitate a sunrise. To forget that harmony would be to fall out of step with existence itself. The wind shifts, warm now, carrying the scent of smoke and maize from the valley below. You stand, stretch, and glance once more at the fading constellations. Even as the sun erases them from sight, you can still feel them, patient as always, waiting for the next night's reading. You know that when darkness returns, you'll find them exactly where they should be, older, wiser, unchanged. The Andes breathe. The rivers glitter. The world continues its slow orbit, quiet and complete. The stars, having watched your story unfold, slip behind daylight's veil, satisfied that you remember. And as you turn toward home, feet crunching softly on the dewy path, you carry their rhythm with you, a quiet promise written in light. Listen long enough and even silence will teach you how to live. The story softens now. The sky has turned pale gold, and the last chill of night sighs away into morning. You can hear faint sounds, the murmur of water against stone, a bird testing its first song, the slow creak of wind through the terraces. Everything moves gently as if the whole world has agreed to whisper. Your breathing slows to match it. In through the nose, out through the mouth, steady, easy. The air feels cleaner here, thinner but kinder, filling you with the same calm that once guided those farmers' eyes. You picture the heavens above, not as distance but as comfort. Soft rivers of light, drifting peacefully over mountains and fields, turning with the patience of centuries. Each star a quiet guardian, watching without judgment, glowing without demand. The ground beneath you is solid, ancient, forgiving. The same earth that received the first seeds now holds you gently in its rhythm. You are part of it, breathing with it, resting with it. Let the last images fade, the terraces, the golden sunstone, the long silver river. Let them blur into calm light behind your eyelids. The story is still there, waiting for tomorrow's night, but for now, the work is done. The stars keep watch. The mountains rest. The sky turns toward day. And you too can drift now, quiet, safe, weightless as starlight.